All right, we're good to go.
Okay. So I guess just in general terms, tell me a little bit about what you were doing back in D.C.
Well, every January, Major County Sheriff's Association has their winter meetings at the JW Marriott, which is right next to the White House. And this year, of course, the topic of conversation was gun control or lack of. And we met with Janet Napolitano, we met with Eric Holder, the president of the Major County Sheriff's Association met with the president of the United States and the vice president of the United States. And we're trying to get a feel for where this administration is trying to go. And I think at the end of the day, the president's recommendations or his 23 points, executive orders, really mirrors California law already. California has some of the strictest gun laws anywhere in the country, and so it kind of mirrors that. And you know, better background checks. You know, who would not support having better background checks for people that have guns? Because we don't want people to have guns that shouldn't have guns. There's no question about that. California does not have the gun show loophole, which other states have. And so that's problematic for us in law enforcement in California, because you can buy a gun in Nevada, walk across the border, you don't have to wait 10 days, you don't have to have a background check. And so that's a little bit problematic for law enforcement. But at the end of the day, I wasn't all that concerned with the 23 executive orders from the president, but Senator Feinstein is trying to introduce legislation that bans certain firearms from the public owning them, and I'm very, very troubled by that.
Okay.
So at the end of the day, you know, you had 70 chiefs of police and major county sheriffs in one room. And what I found is that geographically makes a difference. The geography makes a difference on where you might stand on this gun control issue. For example, the chief of police of Philadelphia, Charles Ramsey, was more amenable to some of the things than I, as a sheriff from the West, and other sheriffs, of course. We are not for gun control. We are not going to go out and assist the federal government in taking guns away from people that have the right to possess that gun in their home by the Second Amendment. So there was a big spectrum of where people come from as leaders in law enforcement.
And I wanted to clarify that point, because before you had gone, there was some confusion back and forth about whether or not what your stance was on this, of whether or not you would enforce federal law.
I'm very careful when I make a decision so that I have all the information, and I didn't believe that I had all the information when this topic first came up. But at the end of the day, I want to make it clear that I'm not going to assist the federal government, and nor our deputy sheriffs in this county, in taking guns away from honest citizens who have the right to possess those arms by the Second Amendment. And you know, there may be some politicians who are trying to denigrate the Second Amendment. But it's no different than trying to denigrate the First Amendment, and that's your right to freedom of press. Technology, this interview will be aired on television. When our forefathers wrote the First Amendment, they never envisioned or dreamed that we were going to have a conversation on a camera that would be broadcast to all of our citizens on television. But that doesn't change the right to freedom of press or the freedom of speech. And so I'm very concerned that that any state or federal government that tries to change the Second Amendment because of their beliefs, they're on a slippery slope, and I can't support that.
Right. But so to clarify your stance, you're okay with the executive orders. You just don't want the banning of any new banning of weapons.
Well, we're stuck with the laws of California, and some of them, for example, the gun show loophole, the 10-day waiting period, and the background check. There are gun control or gun advocates that don't believe that we should have that. But in law enforcement, as the sheriff, those are beneficial to me, because I don't want someone that has mental health issues, someone that is a felon to possess firearms. And that helps me and helps the deputies of this department keep guns out of those people's hands. So yeah, I have to support that, but I'm not going to go to the point where we start disarming our good citizens who have the right to bear arms.
Okay. What specific weapons is it that Senator Feinstein wants to ban that you are?
There's several hundred of them.
Wow.
And you know, here's the issue. The AR-15 is a scary-looking animal to the general public. It looks like the rifle that we take to war, but it's not. It just looks like it. It's a semi-automatic, not an automatic. It fires every time you pull the trigger, just like the Glock that I carry on my hip, and that millions of people own, possess in their house. In fact, if you stood them side by side in California, where there's 9 limit magazine for the AR-15, and the Glock, which has 15 rounds, I can fire 45 rounds out of a Glock much quicker than you can out of an AR-15 with reloading. And in a confined area, such as a classroom, it's much more accurate because you have to aim a rifle. And so if we're going to outlaw the AR-15 or weapons similar to that, what have we really accomplished? Not a thing. This is feel-good legislation that doesn't make me feel very good.
Yeah. We're just little old Kern County. You go back to D.C. Were we heard? Do you think our concerns were heard, and were they paying attention to us?
Yeah, I do think we were heard. You know, when the president and the vice president of the United States meet with representatives from major county sheriffs and major city chiefs in the Oval Office, in the White House, that's pretty big stuff. We have their ear. And I think that sheriffs that are standing up, I think that this administration is listening. Because these are good, honest people that want to keep firearms in their house to protect their family and to protect their children, and that's a fundamental right. I have it in my home to protect my family. Why shouldn't you be allowed to have that same right that I have to protect your family?
And so they're not, you got the feeling they're not just taking the advice they want to hear, they're actually listening from all sides?
I think they are listening, and I don't think they have our best interests at heart. I think that at the end of the day, that information they get will politically guide them, and I think that's the intent here. We're not at war with the federal government. It's important that people understand that. The federal government, I partner with DEA, where we go out and we take down meth labs, and we seize methamphetamine and heroin, and national marijuana grows in our national forest. Those are all our partners from the federal government. They also provide over $1 billion to Kern County government. Our Kern County government is $2.5 billion, and if you look at approximately $1 billion being from the federal government, you have to consider that as a leader of law enforcement, because it's not money that comes to me. It's money that comes to our county and all the different things that we do. So this issue is big, and it's complex, and there's no easy answer. But I want to make it clear, we're not at war with the federal government. We just don't, in this county, don't agree with gun control, and we're not going to accept that.
Yeah, did the incident in Taft come up?
The incident in Taft came up we had a briefing from the chief of police of the Newtown shooting and the lead investigator, and it was alarming to hear it and to see what took place. You read it in the newspaper, but when the chief of police is there, he'll never be the same person again. This is a small police department with a small number of officers, a small town. That town will never be the same, the devastation that was occurred. You know, I didn't realize that the suspect was 6'1" and weighed 112 pounds. Just that physical description tells you there might have been some issues, you know, leading up to this. The description of him having the most violent video games at home, and in those video games, he got points for killing, not wounding. In Newtown, he made sure he killed. And things like using the AR-15 when he went into the bathroom and killed children. He had trouble with the AR-15 because you can't maneuver it, and a handgun would have been much, you know, more comfortable. He still killed everybody in that bathroom, and I don't want to minimize that at all. But my point is, it doesn't matter in those cases whether he's got an AR-15 or a Glock 40 caliber handgun. He's bent on killing people and children.
So there's this segment of people who say, you know, they don't want to necessarily change the Second Amendment, and they certainly wouldn't want to ban, you know, a handgun or a shotgun from individuals owning, but maybe these higher tech weapons we shouldn't own.
Why?
Or shouldn't be in private hands.
Why? I mean, the answer is why. If it's in private hands, the good people, they aren't gonna hurt people. You know, we lost sight of the fact that shooting in America is a sport. people go out and that's, some people play golf, some people go to movies, some people like to go to the range and shoot a gun, and shoot an AR-15 is fun to shoot. I've shot them many times. I've shot the M16 because I was in the military, and during the Vietnam conflict, that's what we carried. But it's not the M16, because the M16 you can empty the magazine in a second and a half by holding the trigger down. The AR-15 has to be, the trigger has to be pulled every single time. So the fact that people go deer hunting and elk hunting, they use a much higher caliber than that Bushmaster to hunt big game. And so when you start limiting these type of weapons, there's going to be a push once that nose is under the tent to go further. Because if we magically could remove all AR-15s today, the next shooting would be with a handgun, and we would be trying to ban those handguns because look what it did. And that's ridiculous.
What about the reinstatement of the assault weapons ban that existed in the 90s? Would you support that?
I don't think, no, I would not support that. I think we're where we're at, and when we start limiting weapons and when we start taking things away that kill people, because the gun is held by someone who wants to kill people. And if that gun's not available, something else will be available to do the same thing. So we're looking at this from a really large, complex issue, but it's not the gun. And we have to stop blaming this on the gun. It's the person that has the gun and the mentality that they have in their head. And if they can't get that gun, they're going to get something else. And we're never going to do away with these semi-automatic handguns and rifles. And so this is feel-good legislation to the from the administration, from some senators, but it doesn't feel good to people that don't believe in gun control, and I'm one of those.
One thing I've just always personally been curious about is, after the North Hollywood shooting, they started putting more AR-15s in the field, and sometimes some places just the supervisors has them, sometimes it's every car. Why wouldn't law enforcement want the tactical advantage of them being the only ones with an AR-15?
Because it's never going to happen. Because you make a law. We have gun laws up to here. The bad guys don't follow the gun laws. Only the good people follow the gun laws. So you can make all the laws you want, and the only one you're impacting are the good people, because these people aren't going to follow the law. They aren't now. So why would they with the new law? If that was a magical fix, I probably would support it. If I thought if we could change the law, people will start obeying the law, of course, but they're not. And so let's stop fooling ourselves and telling the public that let's add new laws because that'll stop or slow these shootings down. It'll have no impact.
Okay. Did we cover everything you wanted to cover?
I think so.
Excellent.